I'd like to issue a complaint. Some of you are not watching all of my videos. Some of you are not writing absolutely glowing comments. And some of you are not sending in tons and tons of money. Well, that's an unrealistic complaint, of course. But I want to talk about complaining in today. Are you somebody who complains? Are you? Are you somebody who will say, do you know what, this isn't good enough? Let me tell you, yesterday I went into Morrison's. Well, the day before I went into Morrison's after the sad death of Her Majesty the Queen. And as I mentioned in yesterday's thing, there was just a table with a white tablecloth, some poultry flowers, and a small little frame with just some text on it, and that was it. And I went to the manager and I said, you know, this isn't good enough. This is Her Majesty the Queen we're talking about, not some plumber down the road who's tripped over in your foyer. This is a person of national importance, in fact, global importance, you know. Everybody knows the Queen. That you may not be a royalist, you may be a Republican, you may be someone who feels benevolent about it or not at all. But I do think that the respect of the head of the nation should be better recognised and condolences given if you're going to make the effort. And at least, the least you could do is put a photograph in there. And the poor woman who I spoke to, and I was very polite when I said this, and I said, look, this is feedback from a customer. I'm a regular customer, only by proximity, but I am a regular customer. And as a result of that, if I don't tell you what I feel, you won't know. And she said, well, I'll send it up to head office. So yesterday I went into Morrison's to do a little bit of shopping, thinking, yeah, well, that probably fell on deaf ears, didn't it? It probably wasn't even mentioned. And lo and behold, there was still the tablecloth, there was still reasonable flowers in a little vase, and a little black-edged frame, photo frame, but it had a photograph in it, and in black and white, and the message of condolence. And I just thought, yay me. I mean, I don't know whether it was just me. I hope that it was other people across the nation had gone into their Morrisons and went, what? This is a bit piss poor, excuse my language. I hope that other people did do that, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. And as a result of that, obviously a directive from head office have come down, and they've said, better put a photograph in. We can't have a revolt. They'll all go to Waitrose, or some other supermarkets are available. They probably won't actually go to Waitrose because that's a little bit more expensive. So yes, I think complaining can be a good thing. I had a lovely chat, by the way, with a chap called Simon from Ingram Cars, who comments on here regularly. He very kindly left a book in my box outside my front door, about the Outer Hebrides, which he's mentioned on several occasions because he's been there a few times, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I'd shown interest that it would be lovely for the lovely Julia and I to go up there, possibly on the Board Explorer channel, where we go, I don't know whether it would be next year or the year after. At some point in the future, it'd be fantastic to go there and explore that wonderful far northern series of islands and things up there, wearing, of course, my Harris tweed jacket, which I'm very fond of. I nearly said partially fond of. Not so much in the summer, by the way. Let me just have a slurp of coffee. My only complaint, really, was that Simon didn't knock on the door and deliver the book to me personally. And I want to have that most sincerely. He probably did knock on the door, and I was either busy or, indeed, I wasn't in, which is probably why I put it in the box. But it's not really, again, it's not a proper complaint at all. But we were talking about complaints. Are you somebody who does complain? And is complaining a good thing? I mean, I know that a lot of people don't like to complain if something's wrong, and it seems a little bit not insignificant sometimes, but very personal to you. Very often, I think the British or the English, stiff upper lip and all of that, will sort of go, oh, well, I'll just, you know, it's too embarrassing. Are you embarrassed to complain? I'm somebody who will complain if I'm in a restaurant or a cafe and you've ordered something, and there's something either missing from it, or it's delivered in a cack-handed way, or there's not very much of it, or you just don't think it's value for money, I will complain. And I've done this many, many times. I've been into these very fancy restaurants, and even when I wasn't paying for it, and at somebody else's thing, and And I bought something that's like this nouveau cuisine, and it's like 2 peas and half a potato, and maybe a little splash of something which is trying to be gravy but hasn't really got anything like the near sort of pool quality of gravy. And it's just looking at me going, yeah, and that's 25 quid, mate. And I said, excuse me, there's not very much on this plate. And they said, well, that is the standard size of dish. And I said, what, for 25 quid? You are having a laugh, aren't you? I said, take it away and put actually a decent sized portion on it. Well, sir, we don't do it. Well, it's either that or I walk out. And of course, we can complain now, can we not, on all these websites that allow us to complain, which I think is, I'm not so keen on that. I'd rather talk to the people themselves there and then rather than go on Twitter and have an outrage. Don't you know, it's outrageous. I went into this shop and your people, they treated me as if I was a piece of dirt, an absolute piece of old squirts. And I am not happy with it. And you know, you can get into a bit of a torrid rage when you do that, or you go on to these trust pilots or whatever is the other one that used to be everywhere when you go and stay in a B&B or sort of travel. I can't remember what it's called. I don't use any of this nonsense. I would rather speak to the people there and then. I mean, sometimes I feel a bit awkward saying, excuse me, I'd like to make a complaint, or I'd like to give you some advice. For example, I went to an Italian restaurant not so long ago, and we were all having a meal. I had just had a basic meal. I was on a bit of a budget because I don't spend huge amounts of money on those sort of things. And it wasn't even, actually, when I think about it, it wasn't even I wasn't even paying. And so I was aware that I didn't want to have a big fancy bill for the person who would very kindly offer to take me into an Italian restaurant. It's one of these chain restaurants, which I never quite know whether the chain is being run by the people who actually own the restaurant or whether it's a franchise. I suspect it was a franchise because I'm sure that the training was abysmal. But anyway, the point being, I had a spaghetti bolognese. There's nothing wrong with the bolognese, not that I could see, and it was pretty much well proportioned and all the rest of it, but it was served on a very cold plate. And so the spaghetti and part of the bolognese, part of the meal was cold. You know, and now I like something that's piping hot. I know there are some restaurants that go, oh, we better not have it too hot because people have burned their tongues on it and then we'll get sued. No, it's not a question of that. I just like my food. If it's supposed to be hot, please, can I have it hot? If I'm paying for it or someone's paying on my behalf, then I would like it to come hot. If you said all our food is going to arrive on cold plates and be partially frozen, then I could make the decision whether I actually want to order that. But if you've got a picture of this item and it looks like it's hot and there's steam coming off it, that is exactly what I want. It's a kind of trade's description fault of if it's not. You know, if you're not adhering to what you're promising, then I think you've every right to complain. So I just thought at the end of this meal, I thought, well, I'll have a word with somebody and just let them know that they served this. It may be that the waitress was new, or the chef was new, or that there was somebody, the person who warmed up the dishes, if they even warm up the dishes, weren't paying particular attention. It may have been a fluke. Which is what I expected them to say. Oh, I'm ever so sorry, sir, it won't happen again, blah, 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 we can take something off your bill. Something like that. But I wasn't doing it to get any money off the bill. I just wanted to talk to the waitress, and as we finished, and we'd already, I think we were waiting for the bill, and she came back and said, is everything all right, sir? And I just said, actually, just to give you a bit of feedback, the plate was cold, and so some of my meal was cold. And she just looked at me, turned her head abruptly and went off. Came back with the revised bill and slapped it down on the table and went, happy now? And I thought, no, it's not about being happy now because I wanted a cheaper meal. I'm giving you feedback so that another customer who perhaps would demand their money back, or a whole load of customers, would be in the knowledge that you would know that your plates are cold and the customer doesn't like cold plates. So that the person doing it wasn't perhaps just on the ball, but maybe, something had happened in their life. They were moan, or they'd had an argument and they grabbed a plate. They hadn't been whatever the reason was. It was feedback in as a complaint, but it was feedback. It wasn't standing there having an absolute argument in front of everyone. I said it very quietly, very politely, very discreetly. But clearly, the waitress didn't know how to take the complaint and just thought, well, you just want some money, and then slapped it down. Happy now? And it's always stayed in my mind, this happy now. It is bonkers, isn't it? I had another issue once where I was on with a telephone company who had been with for years. And I'd signed a contract for an internet upgrade. And normally you get something like 15 days to think about it and then come back and say, do you know what? I found a deal elsewhere. It's cheaper than yours. I don't want it. And this was exactly the same case. It was a couple of days in and they said, oh, we're going to come in and switch you over to this new hyper super upgrade, because being a YouTuber, obviously, I'm uploading videos and it's important for me to get those speeds as high as it is possible within the budget that I've got. So I set all this up. Nobody was coming to the house, nobody at all. And I was thinking, and because they needed to come, they said, oh, we have to come, give you a new router, or they had to do something in the road outside, or whatever the excuse was, because it was going from copper to sort of fibre type of thing. So I said, that's, great. And they said it'll be, a couple of days. And a couple of days goes past and you're into day 4 or 5 or 6. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you're taking my money and I've been with you for years, and this is nothing is happening. I've had no reason, and nobody's keeping me updated. So I rang them up and I said, you know what? And at the same time, I was thinking, I wonder if there's a better deal somewhere else, and also I wonder if it's going to be quicker. And I found another company, and they purported to be quicker, and all of these things. And I thought, right, well, I'll just switch over to them. I've had enough. I've been with this company for something like 20 years, or whatever it was, on the phone line, and then with the internet and the mobile phones and all of this nonsense over the years. I'd been very loyal to them, and I'd kept with them. And I rang up the guy, and I rang them up on their service, and I got through to somebody. And I said, look, I'm really sorry, but I think I'm going to revoke on this. I've got a 15-day thing, and I don't want it. And he said, no, you don't have a 15-day thing. I said, what do you mean I don't have a 15-day thing? He said, no, we actually, when you signed up for this, we did tell you verbally you don't have if you sign up to this new agreement, you don't have the 15-day change your mind policy, which is all other companies do. But if we tell you that verbally, it's perfectly legal. And I said, I have no recollection of that, and it's probably one of those things that as you're ordering and you're going, well, how much is it? Oh, is it that much? Oh, right, okay. And he's like, oh, yeah. Well, no, that's fine. I want it. That I hadn't taken it in. So I hadn't taken. He said, well, I'm sorry, sir. If you hadn't taken it in at the time we told you, that's it. And I said, well, hang on a minute. You haven't delivered the service you said within the days. I'm complaining about this. They said, well, we will get round to it. And I said, yeah, but, and he just stood his ground. So in the end, I said, look, I've been with you for 20 years. I've been with you for so long. I would have thought that there is some sense of loyalty in here. I said, well, I'm ever so sorry, but this is the policy. And I said, well, the policy can be shifted, can't it? I'm a customer of yours. I paid for this. I'm actually paying part of my money, collectively, is paying your wage. And you're telling me that you won't ship. I'm sorry, sir, but you. And I said, well, that's just not good enough. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but that is the policy. And I thought to myself, this is outrageous. So I kept him on the phone for as long as I possibly could, moaning and groaning about this. And I said, but what's going to happen now is I am not going to recommend your company to anybody else. And as soon as I come to the end of this 2-year period that I've had to sign up for, which you will not shift because it's only been a couple of days, and you will not. And he said, do you think I'm actually going to stay with this company? That I will, in the capacity of an online person and in my business and recommendations, I will actually recommend you. Do you not think this is going to be a bit detrimental, where you could just say, do you know what, we didn't do the service very well, and in the end, we'll either, I'm really sorry, we won't charge you this, or we'll take a month off your bill, or we'll do this, or we'll offer something. You're just saying that because you told me verbally that I didn't have the 15-day change your mind thing that most companies have by law, and because you said it to me verbally, it's perfectly well, and I have no recollection. And if you'd said that and I'd actually understood it, and I'm not saying you didn't say it, I'm just saying I probably didn't hear you because I was thinking about the tariffs and the changes and should I upgrade and will I do all of that, which you probably snuck it in there. That you are now not going to say, well, this is the company policy and all. And I asked to speak to the manager, and the manager wouldn't do anything, and nobody would shift. And I thought, right, in that case, I am not, when it comes to an end, and it's nearly come to an end, I am not going to go with the same company. I'm going to go elsewhere and take my business. And at that point, I will tell everybody, I will name the company and shame them and say exactly what has happened. I'm not doing it now because I'm still within this dreaded contract, but I will do the minute I get out of it. And they can go and do one because they just were not, able to shift. So, I tried to complain in that sense, but I think it was worth doing. I have a breakdown cover for my van, and they sent me in a thing, and a bill, and it was £100 more than I paid the previous year. £100 more. And I rang them up and I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to complain about this. This has gone up. I understand that prices go up, but it's £100 more for exactly the same service. And they said, oh, well, I said, I have been with you for over 30 years. And I used the logic. But complaining and saying, hang on a minute, I'm not happy with this, managed, in my case, they said, well, we'll give you the price of it, what it is last year, the last time, which was £100 saving. I said, thank you very much. So I'd saved £100 on that. I mean, it's totally and utterly ridiculous that people try to get away with these things, and it is well worth complaining. But I know some people find it very difficult. Are you one of those? Do you find it difficult to complain? Or will you put your foot down and say, do you know what, this is not good enough? Now, of course, there are those people out there who will complain for the sake of it, every little thing, and there's no tolerance at all. Now, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about being complete and utter person who is just, cannot tolerate anything, cannot take a few things on the chin. If you see that somebody is, again, back in a restaurant, you can see that they're incredibly busy and you're having to wait a little longer because it's busy, or there's a difficult customer over there, and you can see and understand that it's not able, or they're short-staffed and things like that, and you might say, well, I haven't had the full service I've had. And they say, well, I'm ever so sorry, sir, but we're a bit short-staffed, and as you can see, it's very busy. Oh, well, I mean, there's some people who will be unreasonable with their complaints. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about being unreasonable. Of course, we should all have a bit of tolerance and respect and understand the situation and read it for what it is. But I'm talking about those complaints which are 100% genuine, that you have a grievance, and then either you do something about it, you say something, or that you don't. And how forceful do you do it? I'd be interested in your comments on that. So yesterday I was talking about the country and what a mess we were in, and a lot of people have sort of agreed with me, remarkably. I was slightly concerned that I was going to say all these things, and I don't like to be terribly pessimistic about life, the universe, and everything, but it does seem that we are being sent down a very dark tunnel in this world, and that there is that sort of sense that maybe it's a bit of a conspiracy, that this is all being done by masters of the universe, as Jordan Peterson has recently sort of made a video about. And that this is actually being driven. I don't know. I'm not saying one way or another. I'm open-minded on that. But we do need to get ourselves out of this mess. And people have been making some comments about that, so let's have a look at that. Kerry Baldwin says, you choose to wear sombre clothes. I choose to have a picture of the Queen on Facebook as a memorial. We all mourn in our ways. I suppose I'm wearing sombre clothes because I'm signalling to the world that I guess, and you might say it's virtual signalling, but I'm signalling that I am mourning the passing of a very special person. I wouldn't necessarily do this other than at a funeral for a friend or a relation or a member of the family, but I think in a national figure, it's a collective thing. It's bringing people together. I think that's what the whole point of that is. I don't know who invented, it's probably the Victorians who invented wearing the dark, sombre clothes at the death of prominent people, and I think they had more of that. But I do think, I get what you're saying. Some people say, well, I am mourning, but I don't want to dress up in all these clothes. I get that, but at the same time, I think it's the Queen is a special case, because of who she was, and how long she reigned, and her position. And as if I remember rightly, we're not citizens, are we? We are. What is it that we are? We're not. We're not citizens because you're citizens of a different type of democracy. We are. I forget the term, but we are the people of Her Majesty. Are we not? And it nearly came back to me then. It's like the brain is, there's somebody in my brain going, what's the bloody word? What's the word? I'll tell him the word. I'm going to hold it back. I'm not going to tell him. Let him embarrass himself on national or international global YouTube. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I don't think it's citizens. I may be wrong. Anyway, but I think with the Queen situation, the thing about if everybody, just even more an armband or a little bit of black or something, it brings us together as a nation to mourn the passing of a very important person. If it's a prime minister, it's not so important. They've got a job to do. I just think the Queen, and I'm not somebody. I mean, I haven't been watching much of the Queen stuff and all of that. I just think this one event, that the death of our monarch, which is something that most of us have never witnessed, that the fact that she's reigned for so long is such an important thing for our country, for our traditions and our customs, to remind ourselves that this is something, because I think we've become incredibly lax on those areas, and that might be a good thing. But on this one occasion, I just think if people have and show the rest of the world that we can come together and respect this one thing. I am very respectful, Kerry, that you're doing, and everybody should do it in their own way, absolutely. But in my mind, in my simplistic mind, it would kind of show some cohesion of the her. I want to keep saying citizens, but we're not citizens of her people. That we share this, especially as a nation, because the nation is being divided up so easily by so many different religions and so many people from different ethnicities, if I can say the word, and people who've come over for various different reasons, and they speak all different languages and all of that. It's this, and that may be a good thing or it may be a bad thing. I'm not going to be talking about that, but I just think for the head of this nation, this country, and the Commonwealth, it would just signify, would it not? Sorry, I have a bloody itchy nose for some reason. Anyway, surely you should be more worried about those people who live in this country who continually try to bring the monarchy down rather than those in bright colours. Well, that is an issue for a different day, I think. Yes, the people who want to bring the monarchy down, the Republicans, as you say, they need to step up and make their argument more interesting than just being horrible. Because nobody's going to listen to people who are being disrespectful and horrible and spit or sing horrible songs. The only way that you can influence people is if you can argue your case convincingly with enthusiasm and make people see what you say is right. Just because you're annoyed about something and you want to antagonize people are just not going to believe you. If you're an antagonistic person, people are not going on your side. That's not how you win friends and influence people. So I'm not too worried about those because they don't seem to be actually, their case seems to be the more they get annoyed and show their colours, the less likely people are actually going to follow them. And I think they're too ignorant to realise that. Andrew Bradbury says, I entirely agree. Well said. I've always been independent, self-employed since 1979, and I'm not changing. Good for you, sir. Carl Chapman says, rule Britannia, Richard. You're right. I totally agree with you. However, the older we get, the more aware we become that the system is stacked against us. Yes, I think that's very true, actually. I think as you get older and wiser and you've had an experience of life, you've seen all the little signs that things do seem to be stacked against us. And maybe then we become too old or we see it all, but we haven't got the effort and energy to do anything about it. Zanibek, now I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, and I've no idea. Zanepka. All boils down, He says, to who you vote for, council and parliament, time for the electorate to do their research on those seeking office. You say that, and somebody else has said that, you voted for the Tories, so you've only got yourself to blame, you should take the responsibility, which is a stupid argument, because in this society, we're not able, I actually don't want to vote for the Tories. There are other parties, small independent parties, but they've got no chance of getting in. They don't get on the ballot paper to get in, and then there's not enough people wanting to vote for them. The system doesn't work. So you've got to then vote for the less worst party. And so in my case, I did vote for the Conservative Party because I actually believe in conservatism. Whether or not the people in the party are actually believing all of that, I don't know. But so when people say, "Oh, it's who you vote for," it isn't. You can disagree with me, of course, but I don't think it is. WEF, he says that's the World Economic Forum, cult is leading those running for office by the nose, apparently. Mary Williams says, well said, Richard. I agree with everything you said, which is very kind of you. And Peter Abrams says, I agree entirely with what you say. I would go further and say England has never England is never going, I'm going to use the English rather than the American, England is never going to be the same because of the damage done in the Second World War, inviting so much greed and corruption in the country's rebuild from capitalists taking full advantage further down the line in years gone by. We are now in a digital revolution where we have lost personal contact. That's very true. Although we are, take the positive side of that, we do make interesting friends. And in a digital revolution as we have, it does give me, within quite wide parameters, I would say, the ability to talk to many more people than I could in an analog world, for example. I mean, just think, and people who do that may influence people to their thought processes, of course, which is maybe the opposite against the mainstream media and what have you. So we've got to look at the converse side. I have that ability to give you my opinions. You may disagree with me. And if I wanted to do that in the analog way, in a similar way, it would be incredibly expensive and awkward for a start. If I wanted to broadcast anything, I'd have to have a broadcast license, wouldn't I? Which can, and then you'd be down to the things like Ofcom, who would be able to monitor and tell me what I can and what I can't say. Now, I understand we're restricted to a certain degree on things like YouTube and all of that. But in the digital age, I could say something and say, but I want to say more on this. Go and read my blog, which might be on my own server, and I can say whatever I damn well like. All right, the ISP might, if it was really horrible and really hatred and really nasty, or it was against the law, that could be shut down. But on the whole, I think the digital revolution, as you say, is it gives the opportunity. It's a good thing. It gives the opportunity for anybody to set up a channel and say what they want. Now, whether that makes any difference or not I agree, is another bag. So much is online, making it impersonal, which I believe has dampened our ability to interact gracefully along with the integrity of such historical events. Well, I do agree that it's become far, far easier. No longer do you have to go down to the library, for example, if you want to find out some facts about something. You can do that, which if you're a writer and you're on a limited time, it's very useful. But that going down to the library may have had two different benefits for it. First, the simple exercise of getting off your bum and going somewhere. B, meeting people and actually talking to people. So I completely agree that has merits. So I can see both sides of the story on that. Paul Cockrell says, just listen to your Naked Englishman. And I can confirm the Morrison thing, as my local one, had exactly the same tribute put up, namely a statement and a flower on a table by the entrance. I wonder if they've changed it. I'd be interested, Paul, if they've changed that now with one with a photograph. But anyway, time is against me, unfortunately. So I want to know, are you somebody who will complain if you have merit to complain? Merit? If you have reason to complain. And what do you do about it? Or are you somebody who just finds the whole thing? If somebody suddenly gets up from the table and you're sitting there in a restaurant, for example, and says, do you know what? This meal was rubbish and I'm not happy about it. Are you somebody who wants the world to swallow you up? Be interested in your comments. Do let me know. Take care. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Until next time. Goodbye.